Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Tracy Bennett. In studio with me today are certified financial planners Tyler Cook and Craig Konstantinovich. And today we're talking about behavior and money. Ever wonder why you make financial decisions and then you have buyer remorse 15 minutes later? There's a reason for that. So we kind of want to get into the weeds. So starting out, the topic today is behavioral triggers in financial decision making. This is a big one, and it's something that I think people just don't really think about. I never thought about it until I started working for the company. Logic prevails, in hindsight is 2020. There's a reason those quotes exist. Yeah. You get hit upside the head and you start to realize, oh, okay, now I understand why I'm doing that or why I feel that way about money. If you grew up a certain way, you kind of perpetuate. And I, honestly, it's interesting because you could have a family of multiple children grow up the same way and have them react very differently to money too. So that actually confuses me. I want to get into that too. So I want to talk about how emotions influence financial choices, even when we know better. What would you say? Why do people get nervous and want to pull out of the market every time it dips, even though they know they shouldn't? Let's hit that one right out of the gate.
Yeah, I think what you said earlier really is the key. It goes back to your early experiences in your childhood with money. And that could be just observing your parents. It could be relatives. It could be good things, bad things. But I think that really starts to mold people. As early as, I would say, even less than 10 years old.
Oh, yeah.
You really start to see some of those things. So I think a lot of times, too, of nowadays, a lot of clients will talk about their parents, which are maybe some Depression era type people who just, hid money around the house and did those things. That's because what they went through as a kid. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that just molded them for their life. So that's really key. And I think, too, there's also maybe a lack of quality education still in the school systems across the nation. It's getting a little better, but there's still a lack there of continued reinforcement and education. So a lot of people focus on their feet. What do I need right now? And then you have the other biases that kick in with that as well. And that's the buyer's remorse piece. But they tend to forget to look up at the horizon and say, okay, what's the big picture? So I think the first thing, though, is when you're a kid and you have maybe a bad experience that shapes you, and maybe things are maybe too easy, that actually sets up for failure in the future as well.
Absolutely.
So there's a mixed bag there.
Yeah. And again, I'll say the same joke that I say to everyone that will ever listen, but as I was being raised, it was always impolite to talk about money, and you never talk to strangers. So now I make a living talking to strangers about money. So it shows you how well I paid attention.
I love that.
I know, right? Yeah. But it really is one of those.
Right.
It's the truth. Like it's a big misnomer. It's a big farce that people actually communicate about money. Like I had no idea what my parents' financial situation looked like. Now I'm here doing this because I'm a product of good financial planning. So again, thank goodness for that. But it is one of those things where you oftentimes get caught up in, either the idea that you need to keep up with the Joneses, or I need to be saving XYZ amount, or, as we've talked about so many times, there's so much information on social media right now where you're trying to measure yourself to where someone else is. So you think, hey, this is, so-and-so is going out and buying their first house or getting a real estate investment. Well, that may be great for them, but they may be looking at something entirely different from a financial picture than you are. So it's one of those things where we're constantly trying to compare ourselves to others. And if we're not doing one thing or another that we feel like is on track with that, or if it's completely off the rails of someone else, then we feel like we're either behind or we're ahead. And that can start to create either fear, angst, or excitement.
Yeah, and you hit one earlier. A couple of stories, sidebar. I can remember, Tony probably won't want me sharing this. I remember being 14 or 15. My grandmother passed away, or my grandfather passed away, I'm sorry. And my grandmother wanted to pack his things up. And so we drove to Michigan City, Indiana, and we started packing up shoes and clothing, and people were squealing in a room. And I remember going into the room, and I was about 14, 15 years old. And he had a shoe rack on the back of his door with rolls that were probably, I don't know, that big around, of bills, not just dollar bills, but bills in every single shoe. Mm-hmm. My grandmother, I think at the time, this would have been I'm aging myself, but in the 1978, went to the bank with a bag with like $5,000 in it, because he hid money. And they were pulling picture frames apart and all that good stuff. Well, I picked up that habit.
Oh, boy.
I did.
All right, I started.
Let's go visit Tracy now.
And I still find myself wanting to tuck it in a tin can, a cookie can in the kitchen instead of where it needs to be. It really is an indoctrination, and I grew up in that generation where I can remember asking one of my parents what we made when I was a young teenager, and I got the answer: "It's none of your damn business." Like, I was scolded hard for it, but at the same time, never taught how to balance a checkbook. We never talked about savings. I mean, and the schools didn't do their job on that end either. You had to take certain classes, which I did my level best to expose myself, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think my story, and I think a lot of people my age can relate to it, is, now that we have the internet especially, and that's why it's dangerous, you're reaching for and clamoring for information as much as you can get, you can absorb. If you can't afford to pay for it, you're looking at every resource you can find that's of value and valid. So those triggers and indoctrinations run deep.
And you mentioned earlier the portfolio of people reacting to that.
Oh, yeah.
The emotional piece of that, the good investing is boring. It is. It's not like what you see on TV and the movies and whatnot. It
requires patience.
Yeah, it requires patience, and it requires to remove those emotions and, again, center yourself back on what your goal is. Talking about that peace of mind concept.
Yeah, but if you come from nothing, if you come from an impoverished situation or a situation of want or lack of information, it's very hard to combat that when you finally do acquire or amass wealth. Especially a lot. I know somebody who actually shoves money in a safe, and that's all they do with
I see
it.
a theme here with you.
I know that's not my family. But
I was going to say, you need to branch out a little bit.
I know somebody
here,
who've done. That's all they will not put it in the bank. They will not do anything with it. So how do you help people break away from that indoctrination? That fear. It's fear-based, right?
Oh, for sure. And it may be a legit fear. It's something that really, they had a bad experience and it was a real thing. But for us, it's about building the relationship, building that trust. So we can't come in with a meat axe and just change somebody's life overnight. So it's about building the trust, working the process, and then you start to see the value and the peace of mind come through that. And that's where then you can actually have those other conversations about some of the real issues. Because there's always, we say find the pain. What's the real issue? Because a lot of times the first answer you get from people is not the actual answer. There's pain behind that. And you got to figure out what that pain is from and then have a conversation. Best story I can think of there is I've worked with somebody for almost 15 years now. Prior to us ever knowing each other, when they were raising their kids back in the 70s and 80s, they were on welfare. Now, multimillionaires.
Wow.
And they did it through disciplined work before they even got involved. Now, we've been able to help and take the plan to the next level, but that was a real pain point. And it took years for me to figure out why I was getting the questions I was and why the trust wasn't there. So that's a huge win once you have that breakthrough. And that's the emotional, psychological piece to it, which is really what we are, right? It's far more personal than it is financial in our world. And so understanding somebody's reasoning or rationale to get the behind the emotions piece, that's the key.
Empathizing, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does require, because going in to meet with a financial advisor when you have that kind of backpack is intimidating, and it brings shame and guilt and embarrassment for bad decisions, bad habits. I would imagine it's very tough to tamp down or at least soothe to earn the trust of those people that come through the door with that kind of experience.
Yeah, there's some that come in and they're literally an open book, and they're, hey, let's lay everything out there. Let's get it all out in the open so you can tell me what I need to do to get where I want to go. I'd say that's probably the smaller percentage of everyone that we interact with. But then you get other people where, to Tyler's point, it's you've really got to prod. You've really got to insert yourself. And as much as everyone says, like, you need to remove the emotion when it comes to managing your finances, that's easier said than done.
Right.
We're talking about things from, birth of children to getting married to buying your first house to, hey, what is the rest of my, or what does my next 40 years look like? Like, we are talking about very intimate things. And a lot of times I joke, significant others are usually the first phone call. Well, we're up there on the list in the top 5 at least when any big things happen, whether it's a promotion, whether it's a new expense, or whether it's a big life-changing event. So when you start to factor all of that in, like to your point earlier about how do you build this or what comes, like you have to develop that trust. You have to be honest and forthright with people. And that's where, again, it's not a gimmick or a game or anything like that, but why I always start off with my story as well of how I got involved in this, because that's very real and tangible to people, where you can face the most difficult challenge that you may have experienced in your life, and to know that finances didn't need to be a concern, well, you got on the right side of it from there. So when my dad passed from a glioblastoma brain tumor, I was in college at the time. I had 2 younger brothers in high school, and my mom was a full-time nurse. So she was working, but she wasn't earning enough in order to take care of all of us. So the fact that we were able to get by where we could grieve and focus on not having him around, that was the most powerful experience that I had. And that's what I tell everyone. That's what I'm trying to do for you. You may have that same experience. You may have something entirely different, but I don't want you to have to bat an eye or think about, what's my portfolio doing? Do I have enough cash on hand? That should be the last thing that you're thinking about.
Right. Your dad would be very proud of you, by the way.
Thank you.
You're killing it.
Yep.
I want to talk a little bit, too, in that same vein. A lot of people think that they need a certain amount of money to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm relating to that, getting, it's down the horizon. So
I was going to say, don't make this be breaking news.
No, you're not going to get rid of me that fast. But you do start to think about it. I wonder if I have enough. Wonder if I need to tighten up in certain areas. So how do you address that with the behavioral triggers that are involved with money?
Yeah, you said a key word there, which is enough, which is different for different people. Some people might have $1 million and that's enough. Probably not these days anymore, but it used to be. Versus others who maybe don't have anything in a portfolio, but they can live off their pension income, and that satisfies their lifestyle. So enough is a different definition based upon the circumstances. And that's what really trying to figure out what that actually is takes some time. And so with the pending retirement thing, we tell people all the time, you're probably going to spend more than you think in the early years because every day is a Saturday, and you get to do those fun things you maybe have been putting off. But if you can stay disciplined to the cash flow and pay attention to that, that helps us be able to give direct answers on what does your bag of money need to look like? How big does it need to be? What is enough? And it works backwards, right? People want to say, how much money do I need? It's more about what am I spending?
Right.
And then we can figure out the total need.
And that's what you were talking earlier in another show about stop-start planning.
Yeah.
I would think that this particular conversation is as relevant with the behavioral triggers. People think that they can see an advisor for an hour or meet for 2 or 3 times and have something, stamped that it's going to sustain them for the next 10 or 20 years. And, life all of a sudden throws a softball at your head and you're standing out there going, I don't know what to do. Well, this is what he told me to do or she told me to do, and this is not working, right? So talk about stop-start planning and the relevance or perils of stop-start planning, I guess is a better way of putting it.
No 2 days are the same, let alone 6 months, let alone 2 years, 10 years, whatever time frame you want to look at. I'm experiencing it right now. Like I've got a 9-month-old and a 3-year-old, and just, whether it be diapers or wipes or you name it, like even in that short period of time, it's changed.
Yeah.
Tyler's jealous right now.
No, he's not.
He's
not
jealous.
at all. He's on the other end
I
of
was
it.
going to say, he's
But-
looking at another end of the milestones
Right.
here.
Yeah.
But it's even just those little things, like, okay, having that cash reserve in place during that time frame, wouldn't it be great if, hey, all I had to do was just focus on buying diapers and wipes for my kids? But no, it's maybe doctor visits. It might be we've got all of a sudden a new roof that needs to be put on the house, or we're going to be going on this big trip together. Now we have to plan on 4 people being there as opposed to 3. Life changes. So if you just sit there and you have this nice spiral-bound gold-plated notebook that says, here's your plan, go, like I would argue that thing's almost as bad of information as it may be a day from now, let alone a year from now.
Yeah,
it's always evolving.
It's stale almost immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like buying a car.
Yeah. A little depreciation. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about DIY financial planning. So much out there. I watch it every day just to kind of see what we're dealing with, from TikTok to Facebook to YouTube. And they are so convincing that they know what they're saying and they know what to tell you to do. If somebody's been managing their own money for years, at what point do they say, I've taken myself as far as I can go?
I mean, I've done consultations where I'll get to the end of it and I'll straight up tell them, you don't need us. You're doing a great job. I'll use the example of a personal trainer. Somebody can wake up, go in their basement every day and get their workout in and do the right nutrition plan. Then do you need to pay for a personal trainer? Maybe not. But a lot of people need that discipline and need the coaching, the guidance, and that's where we come in on the professional side. So we can help take people who have done it really well by themselves to that next level. And the story I mentioned earlier of going from welfare to multi-millions.
Yeah.
A lot of that was them on their own. We were able to take it to the next level and give them peace of mind. So there's a fit for it, and I do think that people can do it on their own. A lot of people are smart enough to do that. They're also smart enough to realize they don't want to do it. Right, that's the other side of the equation.
Until they approach the Social Security, the taxation is a big one. When I sit and think about, okay, I can do this, and then all of a sudden the taxation, optimizing, your current savings with Social Security and Medicare. I mean, that is such a behemoth of a universe in and of itself. Behavioral triggers relating to the stubbornness, I guess, of digging in your heels and saying, I can do this on my own, and then hitting a wall. And then I've had people come to us and say, I wish I had pulled the trigger 6 years ago when I first met you guys. I thought I could do it, and I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing where I see, us really coming in and helping people. We always say everyone needs a financial plan, not everyone needs a financial planner. And I, again, as Tyler said, truly believe that. But at the same time, to your point about Social Security, what about Medicare? What about if I want to retire before Medicare? Am I set up in the right position? What if I've got a business? Like, there's different circumstances. That's why it's personal finances. Every single person is different, and we don't approach any two financial plans the exact same. We may talk about the same topics because they're all still relevant, but we're going to approach them very differently. So if you own a business, maybe estate planning is significantly more important for you because you've got to figure out how's the business continue if you're not there, versus someone that may not have a business. They may just be working for some bigger employer. Well, maybe they need to have a larger amount of life insurance because maybe their spouse isn't working and they're the primary breadwinner for the household. They've got 2-3 kids. They want to make sure that they can get through college. My story exactly, like, hey, maybe more life insurance is needed on one person versus the other. Well, you may be able to go out there, use calculators, ballpark that, but are you confident that that's right? Are you confident you've got the right amount? When do you get rid of it? Those are all things that we tie together and say, here's giving your plan and where you want to go, what you need to do.
And the life changes is a good example. The other one, too, is just what happens in our world with tax law changes.
Oh, yeah.
New things that change on even on like local level, like property tax things. I remember years ago, just tax changes that prompted a lot of things that even the local things that needed advice. So you'd have to keep up on that on your own. And there's some people that can. Retired engineers, I always pick on them, love them. I have many clients that do that. But they have the mindset and the patience to maybe do it. At some point, though, I see a lot of people go, I'm just tired.
It's enough already.
I'm just done.
Yeah.
So that's, again, everybody has their own prerogative and where they go. And when we do hear that quite a bit, like, I wish I would have met you earlier, which we take that as a compliment. But I also think, man, me too.
Yeah.
I wish we could have had a relationship together.
Yeah. Relative to herd mentality and the influence of financial trends, when you're talking about the emotional aspect of money and behavioral and indoctrination, how do you help people understand that the advisor really kind of looks to help you deal with that on the front lines through the meeting process? And I mean, that's so important, is that relationship aspect of it. When you've got somebody who has FOMO, right? And they come in and they've got the next big thing that somebody's told, or, their wealthy friend has a stock they want them to buy. I mean, that's got to be very difficult to manage given the indoctrination of certain behavioral trends they've grown up with.
Yeah, Vanguard did a study on this actually a few years ago, and I don't have the exact stats on it, but the point was there's a lot of value in the advisor telling the client no. Mm-hmm. And we're not yes people, right? We're not sitting there just, and I tell people that right out of the gate. We're going to tell you yes or no because what's best for you, and you might not like it sometimes, but sometimes no is the best answer. And so that herd mentality, everybody just is going in that one direction, especially with the social media trends like you talked about. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes it's too good to be true, right? You hear that phrase, and it probably is, right, when you hear that. So if it sounds like it is, it probably is too good to be true. So the idea being, too, when you get in the investment world, that's where your networks of influence will change. And as your net worth grows and you get more involved in maybe local boards or charitable organizations, people try to start pitching products in that sense as well. And it really is oftentimes from a greed standpoint. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I think happens on social media with the herd is you saw it with GameStop and AMC back during COVID.
Crypto.
And crypto even had a piece to that as well. But it was all greed-driven. A lot of that was greed-driven in terms of how do I get the shortcut to financial success. And there are no shortcuts. Mm-hmm. There are no shortcuts. And you hear that the very small people that actually got lucky and hit it big with crypto or whatever else, that's the minority, significant minority of the real world scenario. So trying to separate yourself back and center again what your goals are, that's the key to it. Because if you get lost in that, then you're just going to be scrolling all day long and trying to figure out what's the next quick thing, and you'll probably end up losing your shirt.
It's hard enough to save for retirement when there's so much that somebody wants to do right now. Is that sort of a mindset you hear all the time?
Yeah.
The sort of play now, pay later kind of attitude?
There's a lot that can go into that. And again, I've said it many times here, but I use my story as the example. You never know when tomorrow may or may not sneak up on you and where there may not be another opportunity from there. So it really comes down to, preparing for the future, but planning for today. So that way you can, to Tyler's point, tracking living expenses, understanding what you need, what you're comfortable with. A lot of people think, oh, when I get to retirement, now I'm going to have the country club membership, or I'm going to go out and I'm going to travel all over the world. That's all well and good, but why are you sacrificing right now, not doing some of it? Not saying all of it. You obviously have your other responsibilities, your other things to do, but maybe start to dip your toe into this retirement, so-called lifestyle, a little bit ahead of time. That way, if you don't like it, you can still adapt your plan to be whatever you want it to be. So that's where the biggest piece comes into play is a lot of times people put off, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, now I'm here. Can I really do it? And that's probably the hardest part.
That would be scary. That would be a scary feeling.
Yeah, it's oftentimes too, we'll use that kind of Harley Davidson motto or slang where they talk about it's not about the destination, it's the ride.
Mm-hmm.
And there's parameters you need. It's not
Right.
don't spend everything today. But oftentimes too, we'll see people that have worked and saved every penny and they'll get to retirement and then a health thing comes up and they can't do what they had planned to do 20 years ago.
Right.
Mobility issues, cancer, whatever, right? Those things come up, and to your point, left a curveball comes out of the corner, and the idea being, if you can just try to capture those moments today, but then don't lose sight of that long-term vision, that's the people who I think have the most enjoyable ride.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Along that piece, because some people tell us too, like, I'm going to spend every penny and the kids get nothing, right? And we have the complete opposite where
Yep.
I'm going to just have a kind of frugal lifestyle and I want my kids to be set. And again, there's pros and cons of both of those, but ultimately,
That's
again,
indoctrination.
it is.
Exactly.
It is.
Because if you grew up with nothing given to you, you kind of, and I'm right there. I'm that person. Grew up impoverished. Food was a struggle, all that good stuff. Spent my life not wanting to be that way. Had kids, said never want them to feel that way. Never want them to experience that. So, that's sort of, they're my fiduciaries.
Yep.
They're above me, I think, in the food chain because of my indoctrination.
Yeah.
I get that.
And it happens all the time.
All right, last question I have. So confirmation bias and the need for honest financial feedback. So we want the advisor to tell us the truth, not just agree with us, right? And back up what they believe. So it's kind of about the relationship. You have to be. It sounds like the advisor. I know what I would want as the layperson. I would want my advisor to have empathy, to have understanding, but be firm and be knowledgeable. And so you want that whole package, and it's a relationship business. It's really not a game of numbers, is it?
Exactly right. I think to the other side of that too, it's a two-way street. So the client on their end has to be forthcoming and truthful with us to actually be able to give them the yes or no answer or confirm what they're doing is right. And I think a lot of time people come in, made some financial mistakes in the past that they're not proud of, and they're a little embarrassed to share it.
Most people do, I would
Right,
assume,
but that's where we try to, it's judgment free. We're not going to be hammering somebody for a bad decision in the past, because oftentimes it wasn't their fault. They were sold something they didn't need. We see that all the time. So the idea being just trying to have that relationship and communication that is an open book, not just when something comes up,
right?
But building the trust along the way
and understanding their indoctrination to help them come out of bad habits and create better ones. I assume, right?
To some extent, yeah. But the other piece too is, as Tyler's saying, like we're also here to say no sometimes, or present more practical alternatives. So if a client has a goal of buying a Ferrari, that may be shooting a little bit too high. Maybe a Lexus, maybe something a little bit nicer than just your run-of-the-mill kind of rudimentary car, but just having that back and forth of, well, why the Ferrari? What exactly is it that you are fixated on with that, or what attaches you to that? Understanding that empathy. Hey, my dad had one growing up, or my uncle did, or this or that. Okay, maybe we then need to look at something that's a little bit more practical. Maybe it's a fixer-upper or something like that. So it's asking those questions. To Tyler's point, having an honest relationship and just being forthright with each other, because we're not going to sit here and say, go buy a Ferrari. By all means, sell the house to do it. Well, if you don't have a garage, it's not really worth it to have a Ferrari. So, but we have to then be a little bit more pragmatic and say, well, here's the trade-off if you were to do that. You got to work another 10 years. you got to save another $100,000 every single year for the next decade. Like, we have to present those alternatives and essentially suffocate the individual with logic to say, yeah, that's probably too lofty of a goal, or maybe not something that's attainable.
Yeah. And the other side's true too. It's don't buy the Honda. Go get the BMW, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other side of the equation. And again, being fee only, not captive to just a company or trying to sell a product, we can have those honest conversations.
Yeah. That's fantastic. All right. Well, thanks, guys. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to hit the share button.
Boxland Media. Think big,